hello Brazil, hello CACDers, and getting ready for this week's concurso. Claro, eu vou falar inglês, ok? Porque para passar você tem que falar inglês quando chegar lá no Rio Branco. So, let's say hello. Let's see if any comments are there. Hi everyone. See who's there. Yo-Yo, Rafaela, Vanessa, Alifi, I think that is. So let's go. Okay, fine. So today, of course, we're going to talk about English, because at the start of the afternoon, you'll have English straight away. So what we're going to go through is the general revision. What many of you, if you've studied here, will, of course, be a lot more familiar with the types of questions. We've just finished the intensive course with exams and simulados under pressure every week. Hi, Daisy. Hi, Vanessa. Okay, so we've done this intensive course. Well, if you've done the extensive course and then the intensive course, then you should be very well prepared, because we've basically followed what Sebraspi and CESP have done in the past, used all of that. And IAGIS, if you've been practicing with IAGIS, it's very similar as well. There are a few small things from last year which Sebraspi did, which we'll have a quick look at as well. But I hope you're ready for English, because English is a difficult area, because not just we've got the first phase, we've also got the second phase. And we'll be doing that later. We've got to finish on we've got to focus, on what's going to happen this weekend. All right, then. So let's remind ourselves what is on the exam. Well, Sebraspi and old CESP and even IAGIS had 5 styles of questions. Now you see there on the slide, I've showed reading comprehension. Okay. Well, when we Alifi asks if it's mainly interpretation. Well, it's sort of half and half, Alifi. We see reading comprehension, which is interpretation, interpretação of the test. Yeah, we'll look at them as well. But we do have those other questions, which we'll see in a moment, which focus on vocabulary. They're these reference questions, which seem easy, but we've practiced them quite a lot. They seem easy, but you've got to be careful with the way you look at them. There's reading comprehension, I suppose, tone and connotation, the implications of how the right person is writing. Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. You too. And there is other questions. And then we've got some grammar questions. They're not asking for grammar, for you to know grammar, but they want to know that the sentence is correct, or the information can go, grammar has the correct, would make sense in that, would focus also on meaning, would make sense if there was a substitution. So although there's interpretation, okay, there's which are the reading comprehension questions, there are those other questions as well. So it's about half and half, sometimes a bit more vocabulary, reference and tone questions and grammar than reading comprehensions. Used to be about 60-40%, but as the test was bigger in the past, it's got smaller, right? Then it's got about 50-50 at the moment. Okay, good. Well, I hope if it's the first time you're with me, I hope you enjoy this information too. Okay, because many of you out there, we teach, we don't have a chance to say hello, ever. Let's go. So there we are. The reading comprehension questions, what I say here is Alifi are there. It's grammar in context. Yes, it is grammar in context. It's not explicitly grammar, Victoria. Okay, but They ask if it's correct. Now, of course, the main rubric they always ask is based on the text. And of course, sometimes the questions come before or after the text to confuse you a little bit. Okay, so you've got to be careful which text it's referencing to. I know it's simple, but got to be careful. And of course, decide if the questions are true or false. Now, in the past, in old exams, they've looked at judge whether the grammar, judge whether the vocabulary, judge whether the semantics or the lexical form. They use other explanations. Okay, so you have to be careful what they're going to use. But in last year, they just used this rubric. Okay, but sometimes they might put all of the vocabulary questions together and ask for something semantic. Okay, so in a way, Victoria's asking for grammar and context. It is syntactic, but of course we have to look at the meaning as well. If it sounds strange, of course it would be false. If it doesn't seem to fit, it would be false. Okay, so that's, I know this is very simple about looking at this rubric, but they could change sometimes. Now, we've had different rubrics in the past, as I said, so always check that first. Okay, then we've got next one. Now, there could be a possible layout change. Now, we've practiced these different layers. The traditional one, Sebastian did, where we have the rubric and 4 statements, which you must decide are true or false. But as we've got Sebastian just said 240 questions, we're looking at maybe they're just statements and not in blocks of 4. Okay, that there can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions here. All right, so there could be numbers because it's just said 240. Right here, they were organized this way. Here, they're not. So there could be a number of them. Right, still looks the same, like 2 questions here would be the 8 questions there. But just so you're familiar, all right, because being familiar, knowing what you're going to see makes it easy. You've still got to be careful, like being familiar with these rubrics. That's why you've still got to read them, okay, to double make sure there is no change, because with the sacanagem, all right, the examiner's always doing this, always wants to catch us when we think we know everything. So we've got to be, of course, attent to any of these changes. So these are the changes where we've got to be careful, the 2 main changes. The rubric, as I said, if it changed, and of course the layout. But the questions will be used the same, I think, 5 styles that we just saw at the start. Okay, so let's have a look at some of them based on Sebastian last year. So here, taking the first paper from Sebastian, the first page from Sebastian last year, and we see, yeah, these interpretation questions. We might say interpretação, which we like to say in Portuguese, don't we? Interpretação. So how we interpret these questions, or how we see, how we comprehend, because we look at understanding, all right, in English, is how we see. Now we see these inference questions. Now, these are the ones we have to be careful with, of course. As it says here, the text stresses, we have to understand the text, either one area or all of the text. The author sides with, so he has sort of a tone, or he wants one opinion. The text suggests, or the text concludes. Of course, it's going to be at the end. So we have to read the whole text. Now, if we had long text, we'd be able to read the questions first, and then just skim and scan through the text and find the answers. But as these are short texts, and you require deeper understanding of the text, you have to read it first before going to the questions. Now, how do we deal with reading comprehension questions? Well, as we said in our course, we get our magic pen that you've been studying with, that knows all of the answers. Okay, and you find the information, you underline that information that's 100% sure, that you've got evidence to prove that you're right. Okay, Yeah, inference, you do overthink these questions. Yes, Vanessa. Okay, that's why by finding the information and underlining it makes you feel logically, that is the answer. That's what I'm going to answer, because we do think, no, it can't be right. It's too easy sometimes. I can't believe that I'm right, because these are deeper texts. They're harder than any other concurso, all right? And the sacanages they play, of course, have caused us to feel doubt in what we say. But if you see it and you think it, and that's the answer, that's what you should be choosing. Make that choice very clearly. If you overthink, you convince yourself you're wrong, right? And it's easier said than done, of course, when you're nervous after lunch and you start, it's another language, of course. It's the first time you come up against another language in the concurso. All the rest is in Portuguese. And then some people get a bit stressed with this, but get it done and get it out of the way. Answer those questions and move on. Don't overthink, overstress. If there's something you are not sure of, leave it and maybe come back to it then. It's better if you don't know, you not answer it, okay? Because there's a chance you'll probably get it right. If you just don't know, you don't know. What's our risk? Many teachers say, it's 50-50, so it's better to take a risk. Well, that is one good strategy you might have. But English is a lot more difficult in many ways, right? This is connotation, these tones and all these things. So maybe just leave it, go to the next one, feel your confidence, and then go back and decide it. Because why? Because you read in the text more information. You'll answer questions later, and it will give you more context, more information, and be able to answer that question better. Okay, and it'd be clearer. Okay, so these are the main comprehension, these inference questions, okay? There are logical questions as well, but the inference questions are the ones where you have to be clear and get that pen, as I say, and underline them. And when my students send me back their papers, it usually I see their underlining, okay? Yeah, Alifi, you have to decide that thing. I would prefer to leave it blank as well. But there are ones who use their mathematics and logic and say, no, it's better you try. If you're weak, maybe, at English, then it's probably better to leave it blank. If you've got a good level of English, then go for it, okay? You know, you've got that feeling, got that gut feeling, as I'm going to say later, and then you should do it, all right? Now, and they say, you know, it doesn't mean that you've got to just, and you know, if you've got a lot you can't do, maybe you're not going to get the score necessary to pass. So you're going to have to think about taking risks. Okay, so you've got to see where you're going. So maybe later you haven't answered a lot during the exam. You think, well, I do need to get points. So you have to assess that when you get to the end of the English, or as you're going through the test, even go back and see it. Okay, fine. Then, of course, we've got referencing questions, vocabulary questions, and grammar questions, which sometimes are mixed with the comprehension questions, or they're in blocks like this, okay? So here we see always refers to, or the referent for, okay? So referring to something. So you have to read, usually it's referring to something that's already said in the text, okay? Or but you have to just double check it if it's referencing to something forward in the next part, the next sentence. But usually it's referring back. All right, so you've got to be clear. What is it referring to? Okay, so read it, and maybe there are two different options you think it could be. Okay, it could be referring to, let's say, a book, or could be referring to a person. So you've got to decide. Read the question, say, is it referring to that, the book? Or is it referring to the person? And then it becomes a lot more obvious. All right. So question yourself what it's referring, what noun or what sentence or what idea it's referring back to. Because referring forward is usually a spoken form. So we see more in literary texts. Okay. We don't expect literary texts here. They used to do it in the past. They might do one here, okay, but they're usually quite academic texts, all right? So we know the style is usually in the present. It's not very descriptive. And they're talking about ideas rather than stories. Okay, so as it says here, individual words or phrases are usually idiomatic. It's not usually a straightforward change, okay? They usually, you need to understand the meaning. So they have words that might like make or do, okay, or not get, no, but words that you can substitute to more formal words or more formal meanings, okay? Or they have phrases, of course, idiomatic phrases like they do here. The lay of the land, I would always say, the lie of the land. So what does that mean? That's what they're going to ask you, and maybe that's a higher level of understanding of text, okay? That's why these texts are very rich. Okay, so of course we've got grammar correctness as well. So in this question, for example, we're just substituting. Does it go grammatically? Can we fit the sentence that already exists with the sentence they're offering? Would it make mistakes? So we've got to check at the end and the beginning if the grammar works. It's usually that's area. No, is it going to be finished with a to an infinitive? Should it finish with a gerund? Is the preposition, does it link with the preposition? Will that work? So you've got to feel it in a way as well. You don't need to know grammar. All right, it doesn't ask you what is a noun or a verb. It has said what's an adjective, okay? But they really don't need you to have an extensive understanding of grammar, okay? But of course, you have to know when you read it if it's right or wrong. So obvious, I know. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, here. Of course, these are why am I underlining these parts? Because that's what it's asking for. The meaning, so we're looking for if it's substitute here, for example, dog with trouble. Okay, so that's a clear vocabulary substitution. Okay, maintaining the coherence and correctness. So if it's coherent, understanding, the meaning, and correctness, we think of the grammar. So they're just using other language to try and confuse us. All right, but can this be replaced? Like here, can we replace this word? Can we replace this phrase? Okay, but it's asking if it's correct. So let's look at the grammar here, okay, as well. The author wishes, so this is maybe the tone of the question. How does he feel? He wishes to write the book, criticizing the coder. So again, it's in a way interpretation of the text, as we said. So again, find the information which proves that to you. Use your pencil, your pen, underline it, make it clear for you that that's the answer. All right, because when it comes to the recursos, then you've got that evidence to know why you made that choice. All right, because there's going to be a lot of recursos, okay, for English. There always is, all right? Because why you got the recursos? Because you want that point to win, okay? You've got to go for it, all right? And so you need some evidence of why you made that choice, all right? And when you look at it again, you can see whether that choice was right or wrong as well after. All right, so, and always use the recursos. Don't be afraid. If it's your first time, all right, and you feel you are right, complain, all right, say something, all right, because what can they say? No, that's all they can say. Can they remove a score from you? No, okay, they can't do that. So don't be afraid to use the recursos. Remember, recursos is like, it's another etapa, it's another step, especially after phase 2, all right? Especially after phase 2. If you go past the phase 2, then you've got to get ready for phase 2.1, which is the recursos as well, all right? So never be afraid to think you're going to be penalized for trying to get a point. Go for it, okay? There might not be a lot of space, I think, on Sebraspi for you to complain, but do so. Try it. Try it. No one, I think you've got to be sure what you're doing and try and explain it. We did the, if you did the simulado with us, they were excellent, the explanations to prove that they were right, and we changed some, okay? Even though I checked and double checked, and I do these exams all of the time, all right? And you can be wrong. The examiners can do it. And English is an area where not many people can write exams, all right? And of course, the people who put the exams together usually don't speak English, so they believe what the English expert is going to do. They can't necessarily check it, all right? Sometimes, especially if it's rushed. I'm sure they probably checked a couple of times, but it is more difficult, okay, as well. Okay, fine. So reference questions, okay, are ones where we're looking back to, we're looking at grammar and vocabulary, just if they can substitute each other again. So like the vocabulary, we're substituting. And of course, a tone question. Does he wish? Is that his tone? He's wishing. And there will be more critical, if it's critical, ironic, or neutral in some ways, okay? So they're the main types of questions, okay? So all I can say is, remember, English is after lunch, so eat light. I don't think you can take bananas and things, but I heard if you take a banana, you have to open the banana peel. You can't cheat. I couldn't believe that when someone told me. A little trust they have in you. So, of course, hydrate yourself during the test. You have to be ready. You have to be and keep hydrated, stay awake, eat light. That's the most important thing, because you're going to hit English and then you've got the rest of the day. So the English is, it's going to hit you. The first one is usually text is usually something about diplomacy, or you start with those reading comprehension questions, okay? So you're going to start underlining them. Hopefully you feel good. And then you go to those vocabulary questions, which are going to be more difficult as well, all right? But there's going to be 3 or 4 texts. We timed it about with these sort of 20, if it was 28 questions, it should take you about 35 minutes for this section, all right? So if you're timing yourself, you're looking at the clock, all right, don't panic if you need a little bit more time. No, Alifi, there won't be any slangs. We'll be idiomatic, but slangs are usually spoken. Alifi asked, should we be concerned with slangs? No, you'd be concerned. Remember, this is an exam. It has to be clear and logical. And slangs are very colloquial, all right? So a slang I used to use in Liverpool, it's boss, would be, it's great. Okay, but nobody would understand that, say, in another part of even England, all right? So there won't be any slangs or colloquial language. It's more academic, so it's clear. The deeper texts, they have to be quite dense in there to make them more difficult, all right? So when I prepare a text, for example, I usually play around with text on ChatGPT, and I have to make it more difficult, more expressive, ask it to make it more difficult for our types of text. Phrasal verbs can be, Vanessa, could be idiomatic, but they tend to be more informal, all right? In informal language and spoken language, you use more phrasal verbs. There could be ones, there could be a few, but they won't be, when we on the course, we looked at phrasal verbs in a way. The types of phrasal verbs they use are the ones within the text you've been studying are more familiar with it, okay? But there won't be. We're looking at more Latin types of languages, which are academic, all right? So it's more formal language. And phrasal verbs are not seen as formal. Not saying that there won't be any, but they're not likely to be, they're not tested anyway, all right? As we saw the lay of the land in the previous question, that's more idiomatic. So those phrases are more important, okay? And these, what we call delexicalized verbs, which are verbs that don't have a lot of meaning, and you can substitute them with others. All right, and you have to see how they are formed with other words, how they're connected together in order to get the meaning. There are other ways of doing it, but not necessarily phrasal verbs. I can't say there won't be, okay, but I don't think I remember phrasal verbs being tested. There are degrees of types of phrasal verbs, and the difficult ones are the ones that even we can invent. And they're not academic. They're spoken. We see rap artists making up language with phrasal verbs all of the time. It's so flexible. So they're not ones we can necessarily test. All right. I hope that's a good answer. So stick those texts and questions. They're texts we're looking at. Okay. So we have to understand what texts are. Okay. And we know the types of questions. The texts are usually academic. They're formal. All right. So we know what type of language they are. All right. If there is a literary text, then we might have a story involved, and that's much more descriptive. But they weren't last year. Okay. In previous years, we had Shakespeare. Okay. We had more literary texts, but we didn't have any last year. I think that's because of the type of diplomats that the etymology is expecting. Okay. In the time of Araujo, he wanted someone who would a lot more with literary text, a lot more reading. He specifically asked that at Rio Branco to do that. Okay, he wanted them to have Shakespeare and things like that. But in my time at Rio Branco, we were never asked that sort of thing. We did use those because if you didn't know, yes, I used to teach at Rio Branco, right, for over 10, I think it was 10, 11 years. So we have to reflect what is the policy or the style that is what necessary at Rio Branco, okay? And then we understand also some of the text. Now, you don't have to know it in English grammar. You have to show yourself, Alifi, if you've got a good level of English, okay? You need a really good level of English for this English test, okay? But it's small. All right, it's not the main part of the question. When you go to the phase 2, that's where you've got to express yourself and have a good understanding of international relations, international politics. That's where, and know those theories, understand how to ask the question, and give good content. All right, so that's not necessarily, of course, here in the first phase, but of course, second phase will come up quite quick. So you will probably be able to calculate what you got right or wrong. On Monday after the exam, we'll go through the questions, okay? I'll be at, I think, lunchtime on Monday. I'll be going through the questions, talking about them. So if you want to come back and confirm with me what you think was right or wrong, then I'll be very welcome to talk to me, well, through the chat, of course. Then, all right, so we're going to continue analyzing and looking at it. Okay, so think logically. That's why I ask you to, when you get your pen and you underline when you think that's the answer, it confirms yourself logically that that's the answer. Okay, there's nothing outside what's in the text. Okay, don't think, but this is the information that they're thinking of. No, it's what's within that text. So that's why you're underlining the information in the text. If you can't find it in the text, it's false. Remember that. If you can't find it in the text, sometimes they questions that you say, I can't see it. Then it's obvious it's going to be wrong. And you keep looking for it, again, overthinking, but it's there. I can find it. It must be that. No, it's not going to be there because you've got to think logically. Okay. Watch out for subtle distortions, okay, of phrases and items. Sometimes someone wrote about having difficulty with negatives, okay? So if they've got a prefix like un or dis, okay, it's better to read the phrases as positive, like put your pen over the word that's negative and read it as positive, and then compare it to the text, okay? And then answer it. And then if it's right, then the negative would mean it's wrong. And you think logically like that, because that's one of the secondizers they use. They've got a sentence in the text which has got negatives, and the statement in the question has got negatives, and you've got positive and negatives to find out. all right, with the meaning. We practiced a lot of that as well. But hopefully there'll only be one anyway. All right, if you've got 2 or 3 reference questions, we're laughing. I always think they're the easiest ones. And as we said, don't overthink. Trust your preparation, okay? In doubt, that gut feeling, as we say, what's in your barriga, here, your gut, all right, is what tells you the answer, okay? But don't think with your heart, think with your head, think logically and your gut, but don't eat anything that's going to make your gut feel bad on the day of the test, okay? Good. I think that's it. Yeah. Let's go back to those questions just at the start here. So it's going to be mainly your reading comprehension questions that will usually come at the start. Okay, it's better you do them first. If they start with the other vocabulary or reference questions, go to the reading comprehensions because they get you to understand the text, okay? Usually they're quite fair and they put reading comprehension questions like they did in this first one, in the first text. They start off with reading comprehension questions, and then they ask for vocabulary and grammar after. All right, so that's what's expected. Usually 2 questions, well, 8 questions a text. All right, and there should be 3 or 4 texts. But as they've said, as I said, there are 240 questions. There might be small changes. That's why I want to be very careful about, very careful about the rubrics and the style of question, not to be worried because English is what you're going to see first. And you want to be calm and answer those questions as you go. Okay. Now I don't know how to do I close this? Okay, fine. Good. There we are. Calling my hair a mess. It's terrible. I have to have my hair cut. Now I see myself. Well, I hope that's okay. I hope get you some help, some thoughts. What do it? Don't, of course, never panic. If you panic, drink water. Okay, it's the best thing. Drink water, be hydrated. What does that do? It gets that information to your brain. It keeps your brain working as well. It's very important. Take deep breaths because it is tough. It's a tough exam, right? But feel great that you're there, all right? You're there. You're there. Many people wouldn't be able to do this exam, and you're facing it. You're doing it. And whatever happens, what I love about this exam, the amount of learning you're doing, whatever you go in the world, doesn't matter if you're a diplomat or not, you'll be better, especially in Brazil, you'll be better than everyone else because you're learning to a very, very high level. All right. And if I know all of the people I've taught, they're all got great jobs. They're all doing very well. Why? Because their understanding of this material that we're doing helps in their life, right? And I cannot, as a father, okay, I'm not young like some of the teachers. As a father, I understand what your parents are going through and supporting you. Some of you, or as a parent, you studying as well. Difficult. If you, especially if you've got children, I've got 2 myself. So I do always sympathize, but understand that in the long term, this effort you're making will only be beneficial, okay? In the short term, you might not see that, but you'll notice that in the future. Good. Well, we're here, of course, at clipping. Next, we're moving on to the composition. All right. I've done some questions already. There are some questions are there online already for us to start. If you want me to correct them and give you scores, I'm quite happy to do that. Here at Clipping, we've started the course, so you can see my recordings, and we're going to go through the next few weeks together as well. And what else? Yeah, that's it. And then the extensive comes again next year, or next semester, and we go again. All right. So if you don't know who I am, I suppose I should. I'm Professor Sean. I teach the government here in Brazil. I teach the highest level, for example, We're just finishing a course with the TCU. The TCU are diplomats. We have auditors and diplomats, supported by the Itamaraty as well. And they are auditing the United Nations. So they're going around the world representing Brazil to audit the United Nations. So they needed to be trained to be diplomats, but auditors in English. And that's what I've been doing the last few years with them, which has been very interesting. Okay. And I teach a lot of the justice as well. I was a teacher at Rio Branco, but I think Bolsonaro, when he came, he didn't like Liverpool. I think that's why I'm not there anymore. Okay. Good, Vanessa. I'm good. If you, I hope you're going to do well again. All right. Get past everyone this phase. You know, you should always have the second art. You should have an eye on the second phase as well. If it's the first time you're doing it, of course, you want to feel good in doing well in the TPS. All right. You might not, of course, but the great thing about the Concurso, it's every year. So we can improve, we can work, because it's too much. Yeah. For example, English requires a lot of preparation. You just can't get it like that. Very few people pass first time, but some of them have. All right. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Okay. So yeah, I'll say good luck to everyone. All the best. I will be online live on Monday talking about the exam with the other teachers as well. And let's hope they're good to you. All right. I don't really it's the time I get nervous for you all as well. All right. All the best and good luck. And see you on the other side of the exam. Okay. Ciao, ciao.